So the first thing that I'd encourage you focusing on if you want to improve your relationship with anyone is improve your relationship with yourself. Because if you don't like the way you respond to criticism, or if you don't like the way you respond to anything out there, that's going to impact your ability to improve your relationship with anyone.
All right, welcome back to the High Performance Path. So, Jordan, tell us a little bit about yourself. Who are you? What do you do? Keep it, about 5 minutes. What are you passionate about?
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Alex. So I have spent the majority of my professional life working in the mental emotional wellbeing space. So I know you know Declan. He and I put together BU and grew that over the last few years, which was amazing. Just what we wanted to do was change the way the world approached mental and emotional well-being, to take it into a more proactive, fun, practical way, rather than having the kind of dreary, pain-focused solutions that we noticed were pretty endemic in the current industry at the time. And then last year, I kind of went on my own little coming of age journey where I moved over to Africa for 3.5 months and really came face to face with my own mortality there. Ended up getting robbed, getting stabbed, going through a really, really rough breakup. And that was like this pivot point in my life, like, shit, okay, I'm not going to live for 83 years or whatever. I don't have that guaranteed. And time to start really questioning, okay, is what I'm doing right now 100% aligned with me? Or am I just settling for it's enjoyable, it's good enough? Because I've got that idea that, I'm going to live another 60, 70 years. And that's, I can fix everything up throughout that. And so that really gave me a point of reflection where I realized, actually, I've always wanted to do work with men. I've always wanted to do work helping men grow into themselves, and in particular, help them be better in relationships, because that's something that I really sucked at. Despite being like mental, emotional well-being, I didn't know how to do a healthy, effective relationship. So that links to what I've been doing now, which is studying relationship counseling and using all those the skills and tools I learned through our proactive approach towards the mental, emotional well-being, and translate it into relationships and helping younger men understand how they can do a relationship in a healthy way that helps them open up and bring them and their partner closer together and to connect more. Because I know for me, one of my biggest fears and one of the things that cost me a lot in not just my intimate relationships, with all of them, was my fear of addressing conflict, because I always thought it'd tear us apart. And what I found was that actually brings us together. So where I am right now is I'm running an organization called Wild at Heart, where we do men's groups, we do relationship counseling and work, just to help men understand that relationships don't need to be this big, scary, confusing thing. There's actually some skills, there's actually some tools, and there's actually some strategies and techniques they can use that are going to improve their relationships. Kind of takes that mystery out of them and gives them the mentorship and tutelage that they need to be able to know what to do, rather than live in a world of confusion.
Yeah, sweet. That's awesome. That's exactly what we're going to dive into this episode, relationships. And so there's the first kind of relationship that comes to mind when people think of relationships is the one with you and your partner. But there's many different, there's so many different types of relationships. There's relationships with your family, your friends, your partner. So I want to dive into a little bit about the different types of relationships and some kind of techniques on how people can improve and kind of get, improve their relationships to, just to live a better life.
I lost you for like the last 7 seconds.
So yeah, basically, which one do you want to dive into first out of all the kind of different types of relationships, the friends, partner, family? Should we start with partner, the most common one that people think about first?
Yeah, so we can definitely jump into how to improve your relationship with your partner. And I know before this, you shot me through like, oh, how can you improve your relationship with yourself? And that is really the start of improving your relationship with anyone, because we've got this great ability to point outside ourselves and go, okay, that's what needs to be fixed. I need to fix my relationship with my partner. I need to fix my relationship with my family, with that friend or with that colleague. And what happens 70% of the time is, and that's a fun statistic, 70% of the conflict you have with people is based on your personality. It's not situational. And so resolving the situation isn't going to address the conflict. So the first thing that I'd encourage you focusing on if you want to improve your relationship with anyone is improve your relationship with yourself. Because if you don't like the way you respond to criticism, or if you don't like the way you respond to anything out there, that's going to impact your ability to improve your relationship with anyone.
Yeah, awesome. What are some tips you give people to start? Like, where do people start to improve their relationship with themselves, I guess?
So what I noticed was your relationship with anyone is pretty much based on three core things. And it's an oversimplification, but it's a nice guideline. And the three of them are passion. And that's like, that energy, that excitement you feel towards, your partner, and like doing stuff with them and just loving them and being with them. And also with yourself of like, okay, what am I passionate about creating in the world? What do I want to go out and create? What like gets that really raw, fiery desire in me to go out and do something? And that's a really key part of a relationship, but it needs to be balanced with the other two, which is the issue, which I think we'll get into a little bit later. A lot of us at the moment, we just want passion in our relationships. We don't want the other two, but they're extremely important. So the other one's integrity, which is, okay, can I actually trust my word? Or am I someone who commits to a million different things, writes a million different goals, and I don't follow through on any of them? My life's like this disorganized mess of half-assed commitments. And if your life looks like that, you really undermine your confidence and faith in yourself, because you're seeing how many times you're breaking your commitments. And like, you are the best witness to the reasons why you wouldn't trust yourself. So if you can't trust yourself, it's going to be pretty hard to trust anyone else. And it's going to be pretty hard to have an open, honest relationship with someone where you don't even trust the words that are coming out of your own mouth. And that was the hardest one for me to face, because I realized all the times I'm a liar, all the times I'm not fully honest because I'm trying to hide the truth because I'm a little bit afraid of it. And it's really scary because not many people hold us accountable to being honest. And like, my belief around that is like, we kind of have indoctrinated into us that we're only allowed to have our successes seen on the world. It's shameful and kind of repulsive to see your failures and see the parts of yourself which you're not so proud of. But those are really important to be able to look at for yourself, and they're really important to be able to share with your partner or your friends, so you're not just selling them a lie and selling them the highlight reel of your life. They can actually have a balanced perspective, because if they don't have that, you're just setting them up to be disappointed. And if you're ignoring the parts of yourself you don't like, you're setting yourself up to be disappointed, and you're delusional.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. What do you find interesting about it?
Just all of it. I mean, like, with social media as well, it's kind of like a highlight reel. I mean, that's the way it was designed to, post stuff that, especially like Instagram, it's very visual, and we want to post things that we're proud of, and like kind of places that we go, basically highlights. And that's what it is, a highlight reel. But that, I mean, it is how it was made to be used, but there's kind of an issue with that as well. Like, the fact that you're comparing yourself to everyone else's highlights and you're not seeing their failures. And so you kind of, all the times where you have lied, or you haven't lived up to, your own integrity. But you don't see everyone else's either. And so that then makes you feel shameful and want to kind of hide that stuff and not kind of accept it, which that's damaging itself.
I'm really glad you used the word accept, because that's the third and really key piece in a relationship, is acceptance.
Beat
You
you to
nailed it, Alex. Like, damn it, you don't even need me on here.
it.
Yeah, because you can have integrity, you can have ruthless honesty, but if you don't have acceptance, and what has to come with acceptance is compassion. So you can be really passionate about your partner, really ruthlessly honest, but that really misses out on the acceptance and that understanding, that really soft holding space, which again, I really sucked at doing that with myself. I was like, okay, I'm going to be brutally honest with myself. I'm going to give myself every, like feed myself the utter and absolute and hard truth. And though that is useful, if it's not done in a way which is nurturing, it's done in a way that's like punishing, that's going to really impact the kindness and the love that's at the core of any relationship, be that with yourself, be that with your partner, be that with your family or your colleagues or your friends.
Well, that's really cool stuff. So before you can improve any of your relationships with other people, you've got to improve your relationship with yourself.
Yeah, because that's the role model. Because if you can't role model how I want to do this relationship with my partner in the way you do it with yourself, then it's going to be pretty hard.
Do you, or maybe your own experience or from experience of helping other people, have you seen this with, say, maybe you have a partner that you identify that they have to, like, to improve your relationship with them, you've got to, improve your relationship with yourself, and they have to improve their relationship with their self as well to then improve both of your relationships. Have you seen examples when one partner's, improving their own relationship, but the other partner is not? And kind of,
Yeah.
what's your advice to kind of approaching this kind of whole thing with the partner without kind of upsetting them, or kind of like without it turning to shit, of pointing out, like, making them feel like they're not good enough?
So that's where understanding what's a non-negotiable for you in a relationship becomes really important. Because sometimes it's okay for you to grow and develop. And there's ways where you can just do that and you're not rubbing it into your partner's face, and you'll know the intention. Well, if you stop and pause for a bit and feel into it, you'll know the intention behind, oh, I realize all these really cool things about myself and about the way I've been relating with you. And that, I've been sacrificing going out and driving my career because I've been afraid of what you'll think of it. And that's not honest to me, and that's not honest to you. And I just wanted to share that with you. And if they start feeling threatened and they start feeling scared by whatever's coming up in you, that's not about you. That's not really your responsibility. That's their shit showing up. And if they want to grow with you, fantastic. If that's scary and they're not ready for that, that's also fantastic, because my personal belief is your relationship isn't going to work with everyone, because the two people have to be willing to meet halfway. Otherwise, you're going to start collapsing your boundaries. And when you collapse your boundaries to try to rescue them, you actually disempower them from doing the work that they need to do to grow up. And that's what it is, growing up to be able to reparent yourself and be your own mentor.
Yeah, interesting. You've probably heard of a book called The 5 Love Languages.
Yes.
I can't remember who it's by. What are your thoughts on that? Kind of the whole concept.
In what sense?
Actually, I should probably explain for people listening who haven't heard of the book. So basically it talks about, we receive love as humans he's broken it down into 5 different ways of receiving love. And I'm probably going to butcher it, but basically it's physical touch,
Yep.
words of affirmation,
Yep.
Um, uh, Gifts, or like buying things. Um,
Not necessarily buying things, but yeah, gifts.
it's just gifts, eh? And
Yep.
then you might have to help me out here. I think one's doing like uh,
Acts of
actions,
service,
acts of service, and then what's the fifth one? I'm forgetting.
quality time.
That's it, quality time. So these are different ways you can show love to your partner, and these are also ways that you can receive love.
Yeah.
And
So
you you'll either favor one or two of these, and your partner might favor a different one or two. And you
mhm.
can, if you feel loved by um, uh, acts of service, you might do that for your partner because that's how you feel loved, but they
Yeah.
might feel love in a different way.
Yeah. So I find it's a really, really useful model for not only yourself and figuring out how do I like to receive love, but also being able to see others and see that maybe they are actually really trying to share love and connection and connect with you in the relationship. But so, for example, my top two are quality time and physical touch. And if I were in a relationship with someone who their top two are acts of service and gifts, which are my lowest two, a few years ago, I would have been like, I just feel like they don't like me. I just feel like they don't really want to be there and present with me in the relationship. Whereas with that model, I can go, actually, I can see that, they come in, they like make me food. They bring me this little card that they've spent time writing out. They do all these things for me. It's like, oh, that's actually just how they're showing love for me. So it was really freeing to understand, oh, okay, cool. They are actually really committed in this relationship. I just haven't been seeing it because I've been looking for love in all the wrong places. And
Yeah,
so it really, I find, helps you to start appreciating what your partner is doing for you. Because maybe you're not looking for it or hearing it or seeing it because you're looking at the wrong things.
yeah, I think it was great, because um, one partner can feel loved if they're receiving love in their love language, but the other partner might feel like they're not loved because there's just a mismatch in what they do. Like they might be um, uh, showing you love by giving you gifts or something like that, and you might not care about that at all. Whereas they think
Mm.
that they are showing you love because that might be how they receive it. So I think it's good just to, like you said, bring some awareness to, oh, they are showing love, or that they care, but in a different way, and then it can match it. You can if they read the book and you both kind of understand and communicate how you both feel loved, then you can kind of change how you kind of show that to each other, so that so that it's their cups, both people's cups are full, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's such an exercise in like getting yourself and your ego out of the way. Because if you want you want that other person to feel loved, what's the most effective way of doing it? The way you instinctually want to do it, or the way that they're actually going to really feel and appreciate it?
Yeah, and I think it's common that a lot of people just copy their parents. However their parents show each other love, um, a person growing up might just copy that and do the same thing with their partner without kind of knowing any different, if they if they don't really know that there's any other way to show their affection.
Oh, absolutely. Like our parents are our first role models from the youngest age, and they set like their behaviors and their beliefs and their values set so much of that core foundation of our personality, which not many people get the opportunity to go back and start rewriting and get objective to. So I was having an awesome chat with this guy, Jacob Clapson, a couple of weeks ago on my podcast about how that the walking gait, your walking gait, Alex, will probably mimic the walking gait of your parents.
Oh, really?
And yeah, like down to how you move your body. And that has really interesting implications. For example, if your parents have back issues or knee issues from a poor walking gait, like that's probably going to carry on to you, because when you were learning to walk, when you were like 1, 2, 3, that's just carried through the whole of your life. And if you translate, and same with eating habits, and same with love habits, same with the way you do your relationship.
Huh. That's really interesting.
Yeah, I was like, shit. A lot of responsibility as a parent, hey?
Yeah. While we're on that topic of parents, why don't we move to family relationships and talk a little bit about that, how you can kind of improve or identify issues with, family members and those kind of relationships.
So the same thing, except in my experience, it's really fucking hard to do with your family or with my family, because the younger you are, we'll go into like a little bit of psychology. The younger you are, the more amplified your emotional experience of the world. Remember when you're like a 4-year-old and somebody took your toy and you're bawling your fucking eyes out, because it's just that emotion's so overwhelming. And what tends to happen when we go and try to have these open, honest relationships with our family is there's a lot of really raw, really young emotional triggers. So it gets pretty hard.
I guess some things can be built up over time as well. Like if there are issues that kind of haven't been addressed, they can go back all the way to when you were young. So that might be stuff that's been bottled up or hidden for, many, many years, which would then be hard to bring back up if it's been pushed down for so long.
Absolutely. And it's really beautiful work opening up and creating a really open, connected relationship with your family, because that will bring out a lot of the parts of yourself that are really young and were developed when you had a really narrow child's view of the world. So they're not very well adapted, because the younger you are, the less perspectives you can hold, the less of a broad, systemic, long-term view you can hold of the world. So a lot of like the destructive actions you'll have are those really young ones, or they're built on the foundation of something you learned when you were a kid. So what I've noticed as I've progressively improved my relationship, my ability to be open and honest and loving towards my family rather than like hold resentment and wish they were better, is I've become a lot softer in the rest of my life. So advice for that is like, be honest with them, and be passionate about, creating it, but don't try to force it, because, as long as you've probably had issues and triggers with them, they've had issues and triggers with you. So take it slow, really stretch that love and acceptance part with yourself and with them, because it might be too deep for someone. Like the wounds or the injuries or the pain might be too deep for them to resolve in a lifetime. But just doing the work, having that bravery and having that courage I've found that for myself, it's been immensely healing. And it's just been like a weight off my shoulders, because suddenly I'm not this reactive little kid when something like reminds me of something that happened when I was like 3. And I don't even realize it reminds me of that, but I'm just like acting like a fucking 3-year-old for some reason.
Cool. And I would imagine that relationships with friends would all have the same or similar principles, right? And I mean, that again, that would depend on how long the friendship has been. Some friendships could be, long as relationships with your family members, and some could be quite shorter. Is it basically the same principles with relationships with friends?
Yeah, they're all relationships. We all relate in the core of the relationship is pretty much those 3 things. Like, you got to be passionate. Like, to have a healthy one, you got to be passionate. You got to have that integrity, that honesty, and you've got to have that acceptance and love and support.
So passionate about the friendship, passionate about the relationship.
Yeah, like passionate about, like, for example, this podcast. I wouldn't be able to show up here really with energy and like intentionality if I didn't have passion for you, Alex, for caring about what you want to do. And like vice versa, on like reflecting that to myself, if I'm not passionate about like going and doing this with you for me, well, then it's just going to be, I feel I'm doing this out of obligation for Alex because I care about his life. And same, like I'm with integrity, I'm going to be honest here. I'm not going to like make up some shit, because that hurts me and it also hurts our relationship, because now that our relationship is kind of clouded with lies, and whatever I do, I get better at doing. So even though it's hard, I'm going to be honest. And if I don't know something, I'll say that, because I'd rather be honest with you than feel momentarily good about myself because I think I'm, oh shit, yeah, I look pretty hot right there, looking like I know everything. And then there's the acceptance of, okay, maybe this podcast doesn't go the way I thought it would, or maybe I fuck up an answer. That's okay, because I believe in our ability to keep growing from this, and that, you know, if we have a terrible podcast together, we actually have the capacity to grow and learn from that, and that's okay.
Yeah. Now, what's your thought on relationships now compared to like 10 years ago? I guess 10 years ago, you were younger as well, but do you think technology and just the way that that we've kind of grown as humans, do you think relationships are different now? As what I mean by that, I mean by like intimate relationships.
So it's kind of a chicken or an egg thing, because we built technology. And so like, we'll use the example you flicked through to me of Tinder. And what Tinder has done is it's really opened up the world of dating. It's never been easier to meet a potential new partner. And what my personal belief is that's a symptom of is we want this really quick, constant high. Like jump on, like just that constant dopamine, serotonin hits. And what that does over time chronically is it'll really inhibit our ability to go and do hard things. So, for example, that maybe have a really difficult conversation, because you probably know how homeostasis works, where we're hitting our dopamine a lot. That's the chemical which has us desire, like feel like we need to do stuff. Like, okay, I need to go eat right now. Interesting rat study. Rats who had their dopamine completely switched off and overwhelmed, they wouldn't even go and get food if they were hungry. Like if food was put in their mouth, they'd eat it, but they did not have the desire to go do that. And looking at the overwhelm, like Facebook, with your constant notifications, constantly triggering that dopamine, same thing. We're getting lazier in doing the hard things. And so apply that to relationships, where now it's never been easy to get that quick match, but probably sending them a message is getting harder, because it's getting scarier, because you have to want it more to put yourself out there. And now, okay, let's translate that into a relationship. You've had a conflict. The desire to go and resolve that is going to be a lot harder to trigger that, because you're just so fatigued, so dopamine fatigued. So looking at that from the world, it's become a lot culturally, because of our biology, because of the way our neurochemicals are being stimulated, and also the way we're mentored. We don't really know how to deal with conflict. We don't really know how to deal with challenging things in our relationships. So it's easy just to move on to the next easy thing.
Yeah, cool. That's interesting. I want to move on to 3 final questions. I'm not sure if I sent these to you before or not, but they're better off answered kind of on the spot anyway. The first thing I want to ask you is, when you think of the word successful, who comes to mind and why?
So for that, it would be me. But not for like, I think I'm the most flashy, successful person in the world, or like whatever success means to you, because I only know what success means to me. And I'm the only one in the world who I've seen everything I've gone through. And for me, I like being able to see, like view myself as like the most successful person that I know of. Not to take anything away from anyone else's success, but it's like mine's the number one success that I care about. And that maybe, does that kind of answer the question?
Yeah, it does. I like that answer a lot. I wasn't expecting that, but I like that answer. The second question, if you traveled back in time 10 years, what advice would you give yourself? So think back to like what you were doing, where you were 10 years ago, what part of your life you were in. What would you say to yourself?
So back then, what would have, like, from the view that I can't change the past, but a really big lesson I've learned in the last 10 years, which has enriched my life a lot, has been learning that if I live from my head and I'm always making really logical decisions, then my life is really safe, but it's really boring and emotionally empty. But if I start like, and what I started doing last year, which was absolutely terrifying, was trying to live a lot more from like my heart and go, okay, well, what am I really passionate about? What scares the shit out of me, but like imagining doing it just sets my soul on fire. And when I was younger, I really didn't have the bravery to do that because I was too afraid of the rejection. I was too afraid of failing. So the two things I'd say would be love and learn from failure and follow what sets your soul on fire, even if it's terrifying, and especially if it's terrifying, because you'll survive. And if you don't, well, then you died doing something awesome that you loved.
That's really good advice. Now, a book recommendation. If you could give the listeners one book to read, it could be on any topic, fiction, non-fiction. What would it be?
I So this is a book I've read twice. The first time I read it, I didn't really think much of it. The second time I read it, it just kind of happened at the right time in my life. And
I was
do you know
gonna I was gonna ask that actually. Was that because the first it was just the wrong time of life when you read it the first time?
Yeah, well, you've probably found when you go and read a book multiple times, you take different things from it.
Especially
And
if there's quite a big distance or gap in between those two reads.
exactly. So I first read the book Siddhartha by Herman Hesse. Are you familiar with it?
I haven't heard of that one.
Okay, so it's about one of the Buddhas and how he became enlightened. And I found it the first time I was probably like early 20s, and yeah, read it. I was like, oh yeah, cool. That's a story about some enlightened dude. Sick. I wonder how I can do that. Wonder how I can get enlightened and like have everyone looking up to me, which was completely like, well, yeah, maybe that was what the writer meant. He wanted to inspire all these people to go and like dominate the spiritual world. And then the second time I read it, what I took from it a lot more was I'm always in the right place, and just let myself notice which way the river's pulling me and swim with the river rather than against it. And that's really changed the language I use towards myself and towards the world, where it's not like, Jordan, you have to make this happen. Jordan, you're going to make it happen. Like, what are you doing? Make it happen. It's okay. Well, let's really feel into what's right for me right now. What is my like soul pulling me to? And let's go with that. And let's trust that.
Yeah, cool. Um, you've got a lot of stuff going on around the Newcastle area where we're both from. Um, so where do you want to send people after this podcast if they want to find out more about you or tell us a little bit about other things you've got going on?
So I've got two major projects at the moment. One is Wild at Heart, which is the relationship mentorship education for particularly young men. And also there's an element of like coming of age in there, because that's something that I think is really, really missing from our cultures, is coming of age rituals and helping people understand what the transition from childhood to adulthood is. So if that's something which really piques your interest, you can check it out at wildatheartrelationships.com.au, or just find Wild at Heart in Australia. And there's also the Wild at Heart podcast on Spotify and all the other podcast places. And the other thing that we connected through was the Big Action Dinner, which is something I run with my partner, because we realized that it's inspiring grassroots organizations, which is going to make the change that this world needs. And unfortunately, there's not really community support with that in Australia. It's so many entrepreneurs I speak to, particularly social entrepreneurs, talk about just how lonely they feel. And especially when they're pre-launch, they're just in ideation. They don't know who to connect with. They don't know how to get support. They don't know how to be supported in moving forward and get any mentorship and guidance. It's a big, scary world that I've been through and that Jamie's been through. So we started doing those big action dinners every month and every 2 months in person once COVID's done, just to help people who are passionate about making a change understand how they can take steps forward and be supported in a community to do that. So you can find that at Big Action Tribe on Facebook and Instagram.
That's awesome, man. When's the next Big Action Dinner? Have you got a date set for the next one? Well, the next one might be in person, will it? Possibly.
We're going to set it online because we're still unsure. And from an ethical standpoint, I don't think it's very responsible for us to be running events. My perspective is like, okay, we haven't eradicated COVID yet. When we send everyone out into the general population, it's just going to create a second spike. So ethically, I don't want to be a part of that. We're going to run it online. We run at 6 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time on the first Saturday of next month, we just run it first Saturday of every month. And that date is the 6th.
Sweet. Well, that's all we got time for, but thanks heaps for coming on the show, man. It's been awesome.
It's been an utter pleasure, mate. And yeah, it's been a lot of fun.